Okay, it's 4 o'clock. It's a couple minutes after 4 actually, and I'm just going to hang out here for a few minutes in the case that anybody else comes online to take part in this webinar. So right now we are live, and it appears as though there are 0 viewers. After doing a test run yesterday, I believe that I'm able to see the amount of people that are online, and right now it appears as though there are not any people online. Hopefully we'll get somebody, so I'm not talking to a audience that is not present. Otherwise that would be a little weird. So I will hang out here for a moment, maybe throw some messages out there online, see if I can stir up some people, that is. Okay, we've got somebody online, it looks like. I'm a little new to the webinar Google Hangout thing, so bear with me, whoever this person is. 2 people, it looks like. I'll wait another couple minutes until we get a couple other people. Okay, we've got 1 viewer out there. I think at this point what I will do is just go ahead and start the presentation. Okay, well, for the couple people that are here, I appreciate you coming on board and taking part of this presentation. Hopefully the resolution and what you're seeing out there is good and everything works. So the purpose of this webinar is to basically share some of the work that I'm doing in an effort to improve the work that I do, and hope that some of what I'm doing is beneficial for other people that are trying to do the same thing. To get a little background on this presentation and on this particular job, what I would like to do is just give a little backstory of what I'm doing, how I ended up doing it, and basically how I got to this. I have this whole thing scheduled for an hour, and this is really the first type of webinar on this platform in this format that I've done, so bear with me as I kind of fumble through here. Welcome to the people that are just joining. I haven't really gotten started, except I take that back, I have gotten started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this report that I put together for my customer. And at the end of each section of this report or design package, I'm going to open it up for questions and go back into the Hangout and allow for some feedback from the people that are out there watching. So to make a long story short, I've had this idea of this company of mine, Deliberate Living Systems, for quite some time. The idea actually took shape last August during my day job. During the day, I work as a sales representative at a local tree farm and nursery. Somebody called our farm and inquired about an arborist consult. I mentioned that we didn't offer that service, but seeing as though I am a certified arborist, I took their information and mentioned that Davis Tree Farm didn't do that, but I knew of somebody that did perform those services. Went and talked with my boss, kind of explained what was going on, and asked him if there would be any kind of conflict of interest and if he would mind if I did this on the side. He said no. Called the person back and said, we don't do this at Davis Tree Farm. However, my company does. I'd be happy to come out there and take a look at your trees. Followed up with them, and within a week I was on site taking a look at some sick trees that had some nutrient deficiencies and things that were taking place on account of the tree being in a lawn. It was over fertilized, so on and so forth. Wrote a report for that and wanted to do things the right way, and ultimately before I actually invoiced and billed the customer, went through the process of forming an LLC, came up with the name Deliberate Living Systems back in April of last year, most likely after a few beers, and having an opportunity to do a side job led to the official creation of Deliberate Living Systems in August. After the completion of the job, I got to speaking with the homeowner about some ideas that they had with regard to their landscape. I liked the particular customer and explained to them in my past I had done some landscape design work while working at nurseries and garden centers in the past, and that I'd be happy to work with them to help create a landscape plan for their backyard. And not really knowing what I was doing, I spent a lot of time, effort, and energy learning and revisiting some things from the past as far as landscape design is concerned. So at this point, I basically put together a big comprehensive report about what exactly I was going to provide them with. And the packages that I came up with for the design were really quite simple, one leading into the other, beginning with a site analysis, which would then turn into a hand-rendered schematic design, which ultimately would be a part of a more detailed design if it got to that point. The objective being each particular package would serve as an opportunity to upsell the customer on the next level of service. For example, beginning with a site analysis, if they were happy with that, I could upsell them on a hand-rendered schematic design. If they were happy with that, that would give the opportunity to move forward with a detailed design package, which would be the most comprehensive package that I could offer at this time. So with that said, this is kind of a breakdown of what we were looking at, and I guess let's just dive right into it. Before I guess before I have any questions, I'll go ahead and try this out and open it up for questions and answers at this time. So it looks like this thing says question and answer is disabled. I'm not really sure why. I'll look at this for a second and see if I can figure it out. But okay, looks like we may not be doing question and answers if I can't get this to work. Yesterday I did a trial run with John Stupica, I think is how his name is pronounced. John, if you're out there, thank you very much. There's actually a number of people that I'd like to thank. Yeah, at this point, I guess what we're just going to have to bypass question and answer for whatever it's worth. If people have questions about the presentation or what I'm doing, that you can send me messages through Facebook, either my personal account or the Deliberate Living Systems account. I will be checking both to make sure that any questions people have do get answered accordingly. Or this video, if I'm not mistaken, will be able to be seen on YouTube, and I will also be monitoring the video on YouTube and the comments there, and will have any questions that are asked answered in the manner in which they were received. So anyways, going through this, I just began this presentation with a breakdown of what the customer could expect, and detailing out to them the first step in the design process is a site analysis. I'm not going to read each line of this thing because the reality is it's 20 pages long. And looking back, that is probably one thing that I will change. I will take out some of this content and modify it accordingly. I went through this and made it as long as it is. I'll just kind of breeze through it real quick. Went through it and made it this long to serve as a template for future designs. So I put in a lot of time and hours into this thing to make it what it is. Not sure how that's going to impact future jobs in the moving forward, but getting back into the design aspect of things after 6 years in the vegetation management field, I figured this would be a good exercise for me to kind of go all out, all in with my first paid gig as a landscape designer with a permaculture twist. So I just gave them some information about the site analysis, explained what a schematic design was, because that was what they signed on for. And much of the content here just came from Wikipedia. The hyperlinks are linked to web pages so the customer can see what it is that I'm referencing. This is just an overview of the property, the history of the property, the goals and objectives that the landowner and the designer had and have. Moving forward, I wanted to give the customer a breakdown of their property and let them know a little bit about the history of the property. Most people don't have a very good comprehensive understanding of the location in which they live. Personally, I'm finding that I am learning more about this as I design the property where Deliberate Living Systems is leasing land. I'm in part of the work exchange that I am doing for my business. I am working with the landowner, leasing land on their farm, paying them, and also in exchange for the lease, we're kind of winging this on the fly, but I'm doing work for them. I'm doing a design for them, helping them with the market garden, and doing a number of other things in addition to payments. So I have a bit of history with finding history on the particular location, and I got lucky in this case because a lot of the history for this customer is much of the same of the property where I'm leasing because it's in the same county. So all this information just came from the county website, assessor's website, township website. The imagery came from Google, and this history from the township where the residence is located simply came from Wikipedia and the Montville Township websites. Everything is linked with the objective to be transparent where I received the information from. Again, just more detailed imagery from Google and giving people a good information or a good background on their property. For the purposes of this webinar, I decided to make the owner's name and address and a bunch of their property information private and anonymous. And I think that in the future, I'll probably be doing the same out of respect for the homeowner. This is a case where I did not run it by them. They do not know that I'm publicizing this, and that's okay because their information is withheld. And moreover, I don't think that they would have a problem doing that, especially with regard to the complexity of the design and their particular situation, which I'll get to down the road. Long story short, they're moving. So scrolling back up here, we went from, a property overview to geographic location to climate information. And all of this information, as you can see, the photos, hopefully this is showing up in the webinar, and you guys can see this image. The frost freeze information for primary climate sites comes from NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, government weather website. Took the images, linked to them, so the homeowner could kind of validate and verify that when it comes to information about frost dates, I'm pulling accurate information. In the same way, the monthly temperature averages, this chart and this table here also came from the NOAA sites, and simple screenshots, copy paste, inserted into the document. The nice thing about the document as such is the document is viewable on, I just did it through Word, Microsoft Word, and it's viewable and scalable on tablets, smartphones, as well as computers. So it makes it easy to present, and ultimately, from the perspective of the customer, easy to review. And I decided to do it this way rather than have a traditional blueprint, to simply take advantage of the technology and gear myself towards doing this online so I could broaden my potential customer base and not limit myself to a 50-mile or so vicinity where I would have to make personal site visits. The reality is most of the information that I have here within this particular presentation is available online. With the technology being what it is, we can do much of what we do online. I don't want to say that the site visits are not important, because they definitely are. And I think that it's easy to overlook how important site visits are. But it really depends on goals and objectives of your customer and ultimately their budget. For example, the budget, I have a questionnaire that I gave them prior to doing any of this, a very comprehensive questionnaire that was about 10 pages in and of itself. And part of that questionnaire was delving into their potential budget, which, if I remember correctly, for this project was $4,000 or $5,000 for the first 12 months, and maybe $10,000 or $12,000 over the course of 24 to 36 months. So they had some money to work with, and with a budget like that, I felt that it was important to make those site visits, especially considering this is my first customer and this newer venture, Deliberate Living Systems. At any rate, getting back to this presentation, we're going on history and basically still doing what was the site analysis, looking at the land form. Not unlike a lot of other suburban residences, most of the land composition is buildings or concrete and turf grass. In this particular case, there was 5 to 10% landscape beds and 3 to 5% of what I called unmanaged wild natural ecosystem, aka woods, and a small stream running through the back lot of the property. Relatively flat. The low spot is down near the property in the back. I'm sorry, back by the stream in the back. And there are a couple wet spots in the yard due to some earthworks that have been taking place on the neighbor's property, draining into their property. So in addition to the land form and land composition, we take a look at the soil. And this is where we start to introduce our customers to some permaculture principles when we start talking about the soil versus dirt. We get to talking about soil biology, throwing some quotes by Dr. Elaine Ingham, and then some more traditional sources down here. Let's see if I can make this show up. Okay. This article, or what's highlighted right now, are 2 articles from American Nurseryman, which is a publication, a green industry publication that is a little bit more well known than something like Permaculture Activist. It actually, after going to Permaculture Voices 2, I decided to take the word permaculture off of my website almost entirely, because as much as I am a proponent and enthusiast of permaculture, most people don't know what permaculture is. And rather than take the time to explain what permaculture is and what it isn't, we can get to that later with customers. And I think, for me at least, it was in my best interest to say that I perform landscape analysis and design with a focus on sustainability and edible landscapes. That's easy for people to understand. Permaculture is not. So for everybody out there, that might be something to consider with regard to performing designs for people. I wish I could say I wish I could take credit for that, but that suggestion actually came from Javin Bernankovich at the Permaculture Voices Conference, and removing those words, or that word permaculture, from my website is something that I did after hearing him make that suggestion, and I did it almost immediately because, well, it made sense. And for those people who haven't heard Javin Bernankovich talk, I would definitely look into what he's doing with his organizations, Permaculture BC and Cultivated Life Design. Javin's a good guy, good role model, good mentor, got a lot of good information, and definitely look him up. He's a stand-up guy doing good work. Getting back to the soil and soil versus dirt, soil samples, while it's important and something that I did and am doing and incorporate in my work on larger scale projects, on a project like this that's 0.22 acres on a lot that we see here below, this is not something that I think is necessary or even appropriate. The lot size is small enough with 0.22 acres that we can actually deal with most of the soil issues that we would encounter on a site-specific basis. And I basically hit on that right here by stating that, right here, most soil fertility issues encountered can be dealt with on a site-specific manner using conventional methods and/or organic matter and fertilizers. I wish I could say that I don't use fertilizers. I wish I could say that everything I do is heady and free range and crunchy with compost teas and comfrey extract. But the reality is, when we look and deal with properties like this that have been conventionally landscaped in the same way that we have conventionally farmed croplands, it's taken decades, if not centuries, for soils to get to where they are. And in this particular case with a customer like this, they live in a house that they've owned for a few years. The house it was probably built sometime back in the 80s or 90s. I suspect that's when this development was installed. And this was something that was taken 20, 30 or more years to get to the state where it's at. And we're not going to be able to implement corrective measures overnight or over the course of a couple of weeks or months or years. And in this particular case, with the customer having goals and objectives of the creation of a sanctuary, as she put it, in the backyard, and a place where she could have her own little personal retreat, I think rather than doing big, broad soil fixing measures, that money was better spent on getting large plant material installed immediately. This is a permaculture-based landscape design. It isn't just straight up food forests and everything like that. As a designer, in this case, I wanted the work. I needed to cater the design to the customer and their goals and objectives. It's not my house, not my property. And so I'm doing the best I can to meet their goals and objectives with, or merge their goals and objectives with my approach to design. Moving forward from land form and land composition and soil, we hit on water, and water comes down from the west, primarily towards the south side of the house, back to the creek, which is on the east side of the property. the colors red and orange on the Contour Map Creator, which is a great tool. ContourMapCreator.com. I'm not really sure what it is, but it's a great site, very easy to use. I just took some screenshots off that. Full credit to Contour Map Creator on the top left of the screen there. And I want to make sure that when I do work like this, that the information's not proprietary. This isn't my work. All I'm doing with this design is putting it together, gathering information, and providing it to somebody in a way that's easily understood. I wish I could say that this was all my work and everything like that, but it's not. Very little of what we do as designers is original, and I think that is something to be aware of and be cognizant of, because that's precisely what Bill Mollison said when he wrote the book, the PDM, which is something that we all know and love. So we spent a lot of time talking about water, rainfall. There is a pond, and to the north that's visible on larger zoomed out photos and imagery from Google. This is just a chart, again, from the NOAA website. You can't see this. As I hover over the document and the image on my screen, what I see is a link. So if you were looking at this, you would go to the National Weather Service Forecast Office website, weather.gov, and ultimately you would see this link would take you to where the source of the screenshot. Moving on from water, we talked a little bit about wind, and this place in Ohio, wind has no patterns, especially in the suburbs. It comes, it goes, it blows everywhere. And right here, Jeffrey Rogers from the Ohio State University, he did a whole write-up of the wind patterns with regard to the area here in Medina County. And I feel comfortable with what he wrote because this is where I live. It's consistent with my own observations. And in this particular location, the wind patterns are such that it's really not going to factor into the choices that we make in the landscape too heavily. So not too much to say on wind here. Solar aspect, on the other hand, is something that does factor into our designs. And what I decided to do was utilize an app on my smartphone called Sunseeker. I have an iPhone. I believe the Sunseeker app is available on Android operating systems. I don't know. Joel Bentley, who is a member of the Medina Permaculture Meetup group, introduced me to this app. It's a great app. And all I did was punch in the address located on the map, zoom in, punched in some dates. In this case, I chose the summer solstice and the winter solstice to provide an idea of what we're looking at in terms of solar aspect at different times of the year, when we have the most sun, when we have the least sun. And what we're seeing here on the picture on the right is when we have the least sun. And what we see in the picture on the left is when we have the most sun. What these yellow lines are moving at an angle across the screen, I really don't know. I didn't know how to get rid of them. I just left them and went with the picture. Doesn't really matter. Customer didn't really seem to care. So therefore, I didn't take the time to explain. You guys are probably wondering what this question is all, or what these lines are all about. Reality is, I don't know. They're just there. I don't like them, but considering what we're looking at here and the information that's provided to us with the design, I don't really care. Moving on, this just kind of breaks down for the homeowner what we're seeing and why we're looking at this. You can read that right here. You can review it later on the web, on the recording. I'm not going to, again, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to sit here and go into this and read everything, because we're already 40 minutes past 4 o'clock. This image is just something I pulled off of Google Images. I think I typed in something for solar aspect, solar something or other, saw a bunch of images. This looked pretty good, and I decided to put it in there because, well, the reality is having photos like this in your presentation takes up space, makes us look smart, and in my opinion, provides more validation to the customer that we actually know what the hell we're talking about. I think that with my experience in the green industry, garden centers, nurseries, landscape installation and maintenance, there has been an underlying tone that landscapers are, well, for lack of a better term, the dregs of society, that anybody can just simply buy a pickup truck and a lawnmower and call themselves a landscaper. And the reality is that's true. Now, I'm of the opinion that regardless of my profession, whether it's landscaping, whether it's in a garden center, whether it's working in the vegetation management field with utility companies, or in this case, doing landscape design, permaculture-based landscape design, I think that it's important to maintain an air of professionalism, especially with regard to what we do in the world of permaculture, if we ever want to see this movement gain traction and become more of a fundamental element and really become a legitimate entity in the green industry. We have to approach things with a professional element and ensure to our customers that we do know what we're doing, and this is how we prove it, just with something as simple as images like this in our designs. So moving forward, we start looking at, this was pretty much the end of the site analysis. I did include a base map. I'll touch on the base map in a little bit. Actually, I take that back. The end of the site analysis was right here, which was looking at the existing landscape. What I did here with the base map was I took this image. I'll scroll up here for a second just so I can get everybody on board with where I'm at and what I'm doing. I took this image, the parcel map. I printed it off. I then blew it up. I went to Staples and blew it up by 200% or something like that. Went on to Amazon, bought a little Huion whiteboard. The thing's about 11 by 17. It is the LED light pad model L4S. HuionTablet.com or www.Huion, that's H like hotel, U like uniform, I like India, O like Omega N November tablet.com, Huion tablet. This is one of the nicest, coolest things that I've ever experimented with and used in my designs. Back in the day when I was in college, we had light tables. Used light tables with my initial experimentations doing design 15 years ago. This is a simple LED light table. The thing is 11 by 17, the size of a legal pad. Actually, this one might be 11 by 14. They have a couple different sizes. The thing costs $45, $50 and makes tracing very easy. Everything I used with regard to the drawing implements, the templates, bought on Amazon Prime. So I blew it up, made sure that my drawings weren't to scale, but basically made a secondary site visit, and I wish you guys could see the cursor on the screen here, but made a secondary site visit and just documented the existing plants on the landscape. This is a very basic landscape. One of the pickup truck landscapers undoubtedly did this, and we have from in the drawing from the top left corner around to the bottom left corner, if we look at that in a clockwise pattern, we see that it's just very basic plants, onesie, twosie plantings, couple things here, couple things there, right along the edges. Not a whole lot of thought and effort put into this landscape, and that's actually a good thing, because when you're working with an existing landscape that somebody's put a lot of time, effort, and energy into, it's sometimes is harder to change it up instead of something like this, which is basically little else than a blank slate. So if you're interested in what the plants are that are existing, you can look at this. Hopefully the resolution is such that it allows you to see what we're dealing with here. Basically just a bunch of shrubs, few azaleas, a lot of ornamental grasses, some butterfly bush, buddleia, some forsythia, some sedge, and a few perennials, stuff like echinacea, and some burning bush out front, and some red twig dogwood. After looking at what we've got in the existing landscape, I took a few pages to introduce my customer to permaculture design concepts, give them a basic breakdown of what permaculture is. The best definition that I've heard of permaculture is by Kenton Suburban of the Permaculture Research Institute in Barbados. He writes, quote, "Permaculture is a design science inspired by nature and guided by ethics. Its purpose is to meet the needs of humanity to benefit the environment," end quote. That is a very concise, solid definition. This image right here is from his site, I believe. I don't really remember. Actually, if it is from the permaculturenow.com. Again, and if I hover over this, I can see the link, the hyperlink to where the image was drawn from. So can my customer. And down here, you guys can see that that right here, we've got a bunch of hyperlinks. This is literally just taken from Wikipedia, copied and pasted. And with a couple quick Google searches, if you type in "what is permaculture," you get a couple sites that direct you to some information about what permaculture is. I took the best information that I found, included it in my presentation, and then ultimately down at the bottom, put links to what I documented so that my customer would be able to have the opportunity to follow up and learn more if they were interested. The objective that I had with putting in a couple pages of permaculture information in my presentation was to give them a baseline and a very basic understanding of permaculture design concepts, an intro to zones and sectors, a little write-up on understanding zone planning. And a lot of this is taken straight from these links: Deep Green Permaculture, CPI Barbados, and right off Wikipedia. It's not perfect, but for the purposes of explaining to somebody who doesn't know what permaculture is, it's sufficient. And again, very basic diagrams on what zone 1 is. Zones 2, zone 3, zone 4, and zone 5. We know what the zones are. Our customers most likely do not. What I tried to do here with explaining zone 1 was use things that they included in their worksheet and questionnaire to me, what their goals and objectives were with the landscape. Small kitchen garden, edible perennials, pollinator garden, tool shed. Those are zone 1 things. You know, again, deep green permaculture is where I pulled this image from. Deep green permaculture is where I pulled a lot of the information from, almost verbatim, because it was written that well. Deep green permaculture, again, is a great source for introductory permaculture concepts. I'm really not sure who manages that site, but they do it well. This is, after some initial sketches, this is what I came up with. As far as my zone map was concerned, I had a nicer image of all of this colored in, and then I lost it. Another thing to keep in mind is when you're doing work on a design, save your work, and you'll save yourself a lot of heartache. So the green here is zone 1. The light blue areas, which are on the north and the southern and the eastern edges of the property, those are zone 2. Those are going to be some managed areas. Zone 3 is basically the turf grass of the property. We look at zone 3 and a lot of our other larger scale designs as croplands and things like that. Turf grass, whether we want to understand it as such or not, in my opinion, is a cropland and something that we can consider to be zone 3. Zone 4 in this particular case is marginal areas bordering a woodland that we can specifically plant some naturalizing plants to draw in wildlife and basically make it a transitional area between the woodland and the plantings. We can utilize a lot of plants like serviceberry and viburnum and things like that, different kinds of roses and shrubs that already exist naturally, but also in this case would be transitional plantings. Moving forward, we talked briefly about sector planning. It's hard. I thought it was hard to discuss sector planning on a site like this because it's 0.22 acres. Again, most of this information was just taken from Deep Green Permaculture, and they did such a good job of writing it up. I used most of it word for word and gave full credit to them for the inclusion of it in my presentation towards them. So looking at a sector analysis, looking back, I think I would have expanded upon this a little bit, maybe even left it out, because this is a drawing that I did. It made sense to me. The arrows, I'll try and explain this in a way that makes sense to you guys, and hopefully it will. My customer, I had to explain it a little bit to them and break it down. They were able to understand it, so I suspect you guys will be able to understand it as well. During the presentation I had with them, she was traveling, so we did the final presentation online through a GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting is what I'm used to presenting with in the past. I like it. I like that platform, but it is something that requires payment. And I think moving forward, I will probably use Skype due to its screen sharing abilities, or Google Hangouts. This was suggested to me, Google Hangouts. I'm not really familiar with it. After a trial run yesterday and today, it seems okay, especially for larger Hangouts and the potential for the interactive abilities with it. As far as webinars are concerned, I'll wait to hear some feedback from you guys, and hopefully you can tell me if it worked, if it didn't, why, and why not. And I'd be very interested in hearing your thoughts on this. But back to the sector analysis, because we are running short on time. The arrows are points of entry from the landscape or from the home to specific points of interest in the landscape. And at each point, or the termination of each arrow, there is something there, whether it's a patch of blueberries and cut flowers, or an herb garden, or an entryway or something. But basically, following these arrows would allow you to navigate through the yard back to the house, and do so in a way that flows and makes sense, and really takes advantage of the design and makes it work. So yeah, basically just like this, by the strategic placement of elements in our design, we can optimize the use of energy in our site. And it's really as simple as that. This is the final design. I'll see if I can blow this up a little bit. This is just a drawing that I did. I have a little bit of experience drawing, and all I did was I'll see if I can get in there just a little bit more. Now, I just did a hand drawing and took a photograph of it and included it in my design. You can see on the left side of the drawing, it's the same as the base map. The majority of the design was going to be focused on the backyard for a number of reasons, mainly involving privacy from the neighbors on both sides and the creation of a sanctuary. Many people in suburban environments are interested in beautifying the front of their home in an effort to keep up with the Joneses. This customer was not interested in that, and that was one of the primary reasons why I wanted to work with them. This was not the average customer in the suburban region, and I think that, well, I just got lucky in this case, seeing as this was my first design customer. Sometimes we have to do work that we don't necessarily want to do for people that we don't necessarily want to work for. In an ideal world, we would pick and choose our customers, but we also live in a world where the reality is that we have to pay the bills. And if we're going to try and do this as our employment, I think that that's an interesting line to toe. I didn't go into a whole lot of detail here. You can see that most of the descriptions of the plants here are really quite simple: shade tolerant flowering ornamental, edible ornamental fruit tree, shade tolerant privacy evergreen, shade tolerant perennial garden, perennial cut flowers. Down on the bottom, multi-season group planting, edible ornamentals. This, I didn't go into a lot of detail specking out what the actual plantings would be, what the sizes would be, and so on and so forth. I decided that would be a part of the detailed design if it got to that point. But for now, I chose to just stick with something as basic as this, because it was a hand-rendered schematic design. And once I got their buy-in with the general layout of plants in this grouping, then we would move forward with detailing out what specific types of plants, giving them some options and things like that. That basically concludes the presentation that I had. And then what I gave them at the end was just a couple bullet points of conclusion and expectations, stuff about hand-rendered schematic design, understanding the concepts and maximizing efficiencies in the design and how that fit in with the goals and objectives that they had, and ultimately having this presented to them as the deliverable and letting them know that I would follow up to schedule the webinar. So what I did at this point was I gave this to them, let them review it for a week or so, let them digest it, and then follow it up with them. I was hoping to do it through a face-to-face interview. Due to some travel and things like that the customer was dealing with, we had to do it online. And like I said before, online is the way to go. And I really liked doing that. And I think that for me, with the business model that I am trying to go after, that's going to be the ideal thing. Because, and what I mean by that is, there's a lot of landscape designers. There's a lot of, most landscape installation and maintenance firms either work with a designer or have one on staff. There's a lot of people who are into the idea of permaculture that want to implement it in their homes, in their landscapes, don't really know how. I think if we can give customers something like this, they can then take this to one of their local landscape designers, and maybe even with a quick phone call to that particular designer, give them suggestions as to what some edible plants are and things like that, and basically start working with local designers to turn them on to the idea of permaculture. Because I don't want to, I'm conflicted with saying this and thinking this. I want to get greedy because I want to grow my business and I want to be successful and I want to be profitable. But on the other hand, I'm such an advocate and proponent of permaculture that I just want the ideas out there, because I think that permaculture is a solutions-oriented approach to some of the problems that we face. And by dealing with common things like landscapes, we can literally improve lives through landscapes with the implementation of permaculture principles. And this is how we do it. This project in particular got put on hold due to the fact that the customer is moving and they will probably not be on site at this property within 6 months. They were very happy to report back to me, though, that they were very satisfied with this presentation, with the work that I had done for them, and will be giving it to the next homeowner along with my name. So hopefully I may get some additional work out of this. I don't know. But either way, when the customer moves to their next home, I'll be working with them remotely and doing the same on their 3-acre suburban lot. It's more of a rural area, but nevertheless, they'd like me to work with them on that as well. The general idea with this, and I'm just going to wrap it up because we're at the 5 o'clock mark and we're about at an hour, and not sure how many people are still on the call, but for those that are, I want to be mindful of the time and in an effort to respect you guys and the lives that you all are leading. I appreciate you listening, but one of the things that I was thinking about doing was, provided that this did escalate into a detailed design package, I was confident in my abilities with the background that I have in the industry to act as the general contractor. And what I mean by that is put together a detailed design with sizes, kind of identify how we would phase out the jobs by putting in the bigger plants in the background, detailing out the edges of the bed, the edges of the beds, and try and accomplish over a 3-year period the implementation of this design, and ultimately the front yard as well, to tie it all together. But work as the liaison between the homeowners and the contractors to make sure that the installation of this job went very smoothly with little work required by the homeowner. And in doing so, that would also be little work for me other than the person that is responsible for coordination and logistics. With a background in project management outside of the landscaping end of things, I have experience working and dealing with people in a capacity like this, and it's not completely foreign to me. So that's something that I am comfortable doing. And for me, that's an approach that makes sense. If that's something that you think makes sense and you want to learn more about that, I'd be happy to talk with you. You can email me at rob@deliberatelivingsystems.com. You can reach out to me through Facebook, either my personal page or the Deliberate Living Systems page. You can comment on YouTube. I'll do my best to make sure that I address any questions that are brought up in any of those platforms through social media or email. And I'll explain a little bit more about my background and how it applies to what I'm trying to do with designs. And if your questions aren't geared or oriented towards design, but they're oriented towards the presentation itself, what I did, would love to talk about that with you as well. If you have any feedback or criticisms, constructive or otherwise, I'm all ears. I decided to do a webinar presentation like this for a couple reasons. One, it's been on my mind for a while to share what it is that I'm doing, in addition to organizing a meetup group on account of inspiration and motivation received from Permaculture Voices 1. I started up the meetup group here locally and after Inspiration and Motivation from Permaculture Voices 2, I decided to take it a step further and just publicize the work that I'm doing in an effort to get the word out there, help other people who want to do the same thing, and also get feedback from people that are interested in it, because by no means am I an expert, and I have a lot to learn, and I think that you guys that are listening can help me, and in return, if I can help you, that's great. That's basically the definition of a good deal, where both parties walk away satisfied. So again, just to wrap up, thank you for taking the time to be a part of this. If you're watching after the fact, thanks for taking the time to watch this presentation. Hopefully you got something out of it and it wasn't a complete waste of an hour of your time. Thanks to everybody that's provided inspiration to me in the past to get me to the point where I am today, which is being able to give a presentation like this. And it's my hope that I can provide just a bit of the motivation and inspiration that's been provided back to me, because I feel like I have an abundance of passion. And if it's anything that ties in to permaculture, the return of surplus, doing things like this is the least that I can do. So with that said, I guess I'll wrap it up and say thank you very much. And again, for questions, feel free to direct them to rob@deliberatelivingsystems.com. Feel free to keep an eye out on Facebook, my personal page, Rob Kaiser, or Banjo Brain, or facebook.com/deliberatelivingsystems. You can reach me there too. Not a big guy on Twitter, trying to improve upon that. My Twitter handle is Robert J. Kaiser. And I recently got on Instagram through basically my biggest customer, which is the farm where I lease land. You can follow us on Twitter at York Meadow Farm. So one more time, thank you very much. And that concludes the presentation. Have a good night, everybody, and thanks for watching.